Modern defense is a hypermodern chess opening where black allows white to occupy the center and then later black counterattack, and it gives black piece activity, flexibility and asymmetrical pawn structures. It begins with the move e4 g6. Now here there are various responses by white. There is knight c3, which is the main line, bishop c5, which is the bishop's attack. There is f4, which is the pseudo-Austrian attack, the Averbakh system with c4, knight c3, and the two knight variation. Well, first I will show you all the variation, and then we will see some common traps in the modern defense. And after that, I will show you a grandmaster's game showing how grandmasters play the modern defense. So let's get started. So after e4 g6, d4, you play bishop g7, black goes knight c3, this is the main line. Then you go d6, preventing the move e5. White goes bishop e3, and now you go a6. Your main idea is to expand on the queen side, fianchet shatter the bishop, and move this knight to the d7 square, and then expand along the queen side and challenge the white center sideways. So after something say queen d2, white is preparing to castle. You expand along the queen side. After that, white goes say f3, defending e5. You play knight d7. You are ready to move this knight out, castle on the king side, and then place c5. Let's say white goes h4. You are going to prevent that move by playing h5. White goes knight h3, say. You play bishop b7, developing the bishop, knight c5, putting this knight on the outpost. You can kick that knight anytime, it's not a big deal. Instead, develop the other knight, and after black goes something say a4, trying to attack this pawn, you can play c6, defending this pawn. And after bishop e2, white has more space, but black is also very much solid. You can castle on the next move, and then you can continue playing. Now let's see white's another response, which is bishop to c4, targeting f7. You play d6, knight f3. Here you play knight f6, developing this knight. Now this is kind of a fierce defense. Queen e2, both side castle, and then you go bishop g4. White goes e5, takes, and here you can move your knight to d5, and then b6 to hit the bishop. Let's say after knight d5, white goes knight b2, then you go knight b6, hitting this bishop. Bishop moves back, and now you can play knight c6. Then let's say white goes s3, kicking this bishop. Then you can play knight to d4, hitting this queen and putting pressure on this knight. Queen e4, hitting the bishop and hitting the knight. Then you can just take this knight, and after white recaptures, you can either take this knight or even move your bishop back. Let's say you exchange this knight, and since this pawn is under attack, you can play c6. Put your pawns on the light square, which will counter this bishop. You can move your queen out and hit this pawn, or even centralize your rook, and then continue playing. Now what if in this position, after knight c3 d6, white goes f4. Now this is somewhat like the Austrian attack in the PS defense. You can go a6 with the same idea of expanding along the queen side and developing your bishop and putting your knight here. White goes knight f3, you play b5, bishop d3, you play knight d7, bishop e3, just normal moves, bishop b7, e5, hitting the center, then you can play knight h6, queen e2, and then you go c5, attacking the center sideways, d takes c5, and here, taking with the knight can lead to some problems. For example, after knight takes, he can take with the bishop, and after you recapture with the pawn, he can castle on the queen side, threatening some discovery. So let's say you move your queen out of the way, then he can play bishop to e4, and after takes, when you castle, white have enough time to play knight d5, hitting your queen, and also expanding along the king side, which is not good for black. Therefore here, instead of taking this pawn, you can play d takes c5, and the position is quite equal. Now let me show you one of the most common system in the modern defense, which is c4, and after d6, white goes knight c3. This is the Averbakh system. Now here after e5, white can go with the exchange variation or with d5, which is the closed variation. Let's look at them one by one. After white takes, we recapture. This is the exchange variation. White trades queens, and then you go bishop to g5 check. You play f6, attacking his bishop. Let's say white castle. You block this check with the other knight. Bishop moves to safety. You play bishop h6, trying to trade this bishop. White goes knight f3. Then you can play c6, bishop e2, king c7. Then let's say white goes something like king c2. You exchange this bishop, rook takes, and then you go knight c5. And after b4, we can move your knight back, and then you can develop on your other pieces. Put this bishop on b7, and then move your rooks on this open files, and then continue playing. Now let me show you the close variation, which is d5. The key move here is knight d7. Let's say white goes knight g2. Then you can play h5, expanding along the king side, h4. You play knight h6, white goes f3, preventing your knight from coming here. You can castle here, and after bishop g5, attacking your queen, you can play f6. And after bishop e3, you can play a6 with the same idea of expanding here. Or here you can even play c6 and move your queen out, put your rooks on this open file, and then continue playing. Now let me show you one of the other common variation, which is the two knight variation. After bishop g7, white goes knight f3, you play c6, knight c3, you go d5, striking in the center. This might seem like Karo-Khan. White goes e5, and then you go bishop g4, pinning this knight. Bishop e2 unpinning, e6, solidifying the center, s3. Then you can take this knight, and after bishop takes, you can play c5, attacking this pawn. B takes c5. You play knight e7, both side castle, and here you can regain the pawn of playing knight to d7, or even put this along this open file, and then continue playing. Now let me show you some common traps in the modern defense which you should be aware of. After e4 g6, d4, bishop g7, knight c3, c5. Attacking in the center, we play d takes c5. And here white goes queen f5. Trying to regain this pawn, we play bishop d2, queen takes, and then you go knight to d5, centralizing your knight. Here, taking this pawn is dangerous because after rook b1, bishop moves back. After bishop b4, let's say black takes, you can just play king to e2, and here black can't do much because if he tries queen to c4 check, then you can take his bishop. Therefore he goes queen to d4. Then here you can play bishop to c3, skewering the queen and hitting the rook. Black exchanges queen, and then his bishop and rook both are hanging. So this is why taking this pawn is dangerous. Instead, black can try e6, taking this knight. Then you can attack the queen with the bishop, queen c6, and then you play bishop to b5, and the queen is completely trapped. You have to take your bishop, and then you go knight to c7 check, forking the king and the queen. Now let's move on to our next trap. After e4 g6, d4, bishop g7, knight f3, d6, you play bishop c4. This is the bishop's attack. Here the main move is knight f6, but if he goes knight to d7, then you can shock him with bishop takes f7 check, king takes f7, and then knight to g5 check. If king f6, then you can just play queen to f3, and it's mate in 1. And here he also cannot go to f8 because knight to e6 will be a 4. So he goes king to e8, and then knight to e6 wins the queen anyways. Let's move on to our next trap. After e4 d6, bishop c4, Knight d7, knight f3, black can go g6. Now this is turned into the modern defense. Knight d5, attacking the f7 pawn. And here black can go knight h6, defending this thread, and then trying to develop his bishop and castle quickly. But here you capture this bishop anyway. Now the knight is forced to take, and then you can just play knight to e6, and his queen is trapped again. Now let me show you one famous trap, and after that we will move on to the game. After e4 g6, knight f3, knight bishop g7, d4, e6. We play bishop c4, knight d7, and here you play bishop takes f7. If king takes, then you know what to do. But here he plays king to f8. You play knight g5, defending the bishop, knight b6, queen f3, threatening a discovered attack, knight f6 covers, e5, takes, and then black goes bishop to g4, attacking the queen. But here you sacrifice your queen and play the brilliant e takes f6. The bishop takes queen, and then you can take this bishop, and after king takes pawn, you can play knight to a6, poking the king and the queen, and the bishop is also under attack. And you are just winning. Now let me show you one of the grandmaster's game, which will help you understand the modern defense better. After d4, here black went g6, white goes e4, and now this is turned into the modern defense after bishop g7. White goes bishop c4, which is the bishop's attack, c6, and here white goes queen to f3, threatening kind of a spoiler's mate, but here black can just block with e6, knight e2, white went d5, striking in the center, bishop b3, knight d7, developing his knight, knight bc3, knight e7, both sides castle, and then white went to d1, b6, trying to put this bishop on the e7 square, bishop f4, bishop b7, bishop d6, taking advantage of the pin, and also threatening to push e5, rook e8, h3, knight f6, and here bishop to e5 was a stronger move, but he went e5, knight d7, trying to rotate his knight, knight g3, and here white went knight to c8, hitting this bishop, bishop a3, maintaining his bishop along this long diagonal, c5, d takes c5, black recapture, and also threatening to push c4, so he went bishop to e4, knight c6, trying to trade this bishop, queen e2, takes, and then queen a5, hitting this knight, b3 defense. Now black takes this pawn and also hits the rook, so bishop moves back, trying to trade this bishop, takes, and then queen c7, queen e3, black went e5, controlling the center, queen g5, f6 by black, queen moves back, and then black brings his other rook, and after rook d2, black went d4, rook e1, and then knight e5, hitting the queen, queen h4, f5, creating this strong pawn chain, knight a4. Here black went d4, queen g5, black went knight f2, attacking the queen, rook d6, hits the queen again, queen h4, rook d6, rook moves back, connecting the rooks, e3, trying to open up f4, white tries to close the center, queen c6 by black, trying to threaten a checkmate, white defends, bishop a6, hits the rook, and here black is completely winning. If he moves the rook, then e2 is coming, and white will be losing completely. Therefore, he tries to sacrifice his rook and play knight to e2. Black takes the rook, and after knight takes, knight d6, knight d3. Black went knight to e4, centralizing his knight. This is such a strong position for black. Therefore, white resigned in this position. Well, this is not the end. If you want to learn some more chess openings like these, then you can check out this left playlist. And if you want to learn some chess traps, then you can check out this right playlist. And if you don't want to miss more amazing videos like these, then don't forget to subscribe.